But let's talk about why this is the most wonderful time in 8 years. You know, we've seen this factory saved, and we've seen Donald Trump continue today to talk about his policies. We have a story that's up on InfoWars from Bloomberg. Ford says they're willing to work with Trump if the policies are right, says the CEO. And you have to understand, this is why I'm hopeful about this. Okay, first of all, we talked about the details of the Indiana jobs. $7 million from Indiana, state money. It wasn't money that Trump gave them. He's not president yet. He couldn't give them the money if he wanted to engage in crony capitalism. And yet you have all these people on both the left and the right who are screaming crony capitalism, crony capitalism. Let's break it down. $7 million for 1,000 jobs over 10 years. That's $700 a year per job. They're going to get more than that in the state of Indiana back from just the taxes that these people pay, let alone the amount of money that will remain in the economy to boost it up everywhere else. So you can discuss this at the state level, decide whether you think that's a good thing. That's very different from what we usually see with these big companies brought in to set up jobs, getting $100,000 per job they say they're going to create. We've seen that here in Texas. We saw it with Elon Musk. That is true crony capitalism, and you cannot support that by any way, means, or form. And yet people do just love Elon Musk. This guy can do no wrong. He's like Steve Jobs. And even though he gets $4 billion, people of crony capitalist funds to create his factories, nobody complained about that, did they? Very few people did. Eric Peters talked about that. We had him on, and a few other people did. But most people just give him a pass. But you pay a little bit of money, $700 per job per year, to bring these people in, and yet they go crazy with this. But when we look at this Ford situation, what he's talking about are the policies, the economic policies that Trump campaigned on. And he's still talking about it. He says, yeah, I'm going to do that. And he doubled down on it today on some tweets. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But here's what the Ford executive said. He said they're looking for things from President Trump that they want to see. These are the type of policies that they want to have him take a look at. The currency manipulation rules, which, of course, Donald Trump talked about that, how currency manipulation is one of the key things that China and other countries do. And understand, China is not a globalist country. They're not about free trade, are they? Why is it that they get a pass? Why aren't they criticized by all these people who support globalism? See, Kissinger and Nixon set these guys up. These Chinese crony capitalists are hyper-nationalists. They do everything to benefit China, and they could care less about free trade. And one of the things they do is currency manipulation. So he says, yeah, we want to see some currency manipulation rules to promote free and fair trade. We want to see tax reform. Yeah, Trump does too. And he says, then we want to see some safety guidelines for autonomous vehicles. That's where Ford wants to apply some pressure, okay? Remember, it's probably 40, 50 years ago, Walter Reuther, maybe longer, it's decades ago, the UAW head, he went to a Ford factory, and the Ford executive said, hey, look at these machines here. We've added to cut labor costs, cut jobs. And he says, how are you going to organize these machines to pay union dues? And Reuther said to him, well, how are you going to get these machines to buy a Ford? Okay, that's what we're looking at. So you want to pay slave wages to people in America? You want to cut out our jobs with robots? You want to pay slave wages to people in Mexico to make your cars? Who's going to buy your cars? Are the people in Mexico going to be able to afford it? See, it's the antithesis of what Henry Ford wanted to do. He famously said that he wanted to raise wages for his Ford factory workers so they would be able to afford to buy his car. But they don't want you to buy a car. See, Ford is considering itself not so much as a car manufacturer, but as a transportation provider. They want to rent cars to you like Uber does, except they want to cut out the middleman Uber and do it directly to you. They're going to have their self-driving cars available in 5 years, but not for sale, for rental only, because they think like global capitalists. They want to turn everybody into renters, into sharecroppers, into serfs, into servants who don't own anything, who don't have jobs. You can't afford to buy their cars. Of course you're not going to be able to afford it. You're not going to have a job, but they want you to rent your transportation from them, and they will work with the government to make sure that everybody has to ride their taxis so they can follow you everywhere, look at everything that you're doing, and make you pay them every time you move. See, automobiles have been a big part of the American economy, and they've been a big part of American freedom. And they're coming after both of those things. And so hopefully that's going to change with Trump. He talks about how they've been forced with regulations to try to push electric vehicles that nobody wants. And I thought this was kind of interesting. He said in 2008, there were 12 electrified vehicles offered in the U.S. market. They had 2.3% of the industry. He said today, 2016, 8 years later, we've got 55 models. So they go from 12 models to 55 models, but the percentage of the marketplace has gone only from 2.3 to 2.8%. Why is that? Because we're still paying Elon Musk a carbon tax, a shift. When you buy a regular car, an internal combustion machine, you pay Elon Musk primarily because he sells mostly electrical cars. You pay him a fee. A tax is applied to regular cars to subsidize these cars that nobody really wants to buy. But he talks about how right after the election, Trump talked to Bill Ford, the chairman of Ford, the executive chairman, and they were talking about that plant moving, and he said Trump influenced their decision because of what he's talking about in terms of his economic policies, whether it's tax reform or otherwise. That's the really hopeful thing here. Yes, it's hopeful that Trump would save jobs in one factory, but we want something that is going to save jobs across America. We want the regulatory and tax burden to be reduced. We want the unfair competition from abroad to be reduced, and that's what Trump understands. And so he's going to look at broad-based tax and economic policies that will benefit all businesses, not just selected businesses. So I think that is very, very positive. But we still see the conservative media, as well as now the liberals, have discovered for the first time that they don't like crony capitalism. They've never complained about that before. They've never spoken out for free market. But now we have CNN saying Trump's 35% Mexican tax would cost Ford billions and hurt Americans. Well, I don't think that 35% tax is going to be directed simply at Mexico. It's going to be directed at people who move their factories abroad and then bring the stuff back in, whether it's Mexico or China or India or wherever they want to go. But nevertheless, again, they put that there to try to bring in an element of racism to it that is not there. But they've been silent about Obama creating a stimulus-funded package, even as it failed repeatedly. Of course, we had Solyndra that failed. He tried to pick a winner there. He tried to subsidize them when the market didn't want it. They failed famously after a lot of money was given to them. But let's talk for a moment about this 48C program. This is a $2.3 billion program, the Advanced Manufacturing Tax Credit Program that Obama put through. This same factory in Carrier, in Indiana, the Carrier factory, got a $5.1 million stimulus-funded tax credit. These people complain about that by saying, hey, we gave them $5 million and they're taking their jobs away. See, National Review talked about that in February of this year, February 2016. They said 3 years ago, in 2013, the same factory in Indiana, the same Carrier factory, got $5 million of federal money, not state money. And they were able to say, we're going to shut this down and leave. Why? Because most of the recipients who had, a lot of these, a large minority, had foreign parent companies. And American-based companies only got 59% of the funds. 40% were going to foreign companies. And they had no penalty if these people took the money and ran, whether they're American or foreign. They just used it as a beard. That's what Obama did. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm going to continue with what I was talking about. You know, as we see people on the right complaining about Donald Trump and saying, this is not the right way to go, giving subsidies to individual factories. And as I talked about, that same factory had been given about the same amount of subsidy by Obama, and they never complained about it. And under that program, about 40% of the money that is going out under the 48C program that Obama created for green jobs is able to go out of the country. As a matter of fact, even the ones that is already going out of the country to foreign companies, to have foreign companies make green jobs. And of the 60% that was going to American companies or people that had American presidents here, there was no provision that they would have to give that money back if they took the money and then ran to another jurisdiction. See, that's the insanity of Obama. That was the ineffectiveness of his policies. And it was crony capitalism, and yet you didn't see these people like CNN complaining about that at the time. Now, there's an article from Activist Post that points out that just in Wisconsin alone, a group did an analysis, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, that showed just in that one state, the rapid expansion of only licensing requirements. It's just one part of the regulations that they put on companies had caused, over the last 20 years, 31,000 fewer jobs and cost consumers about $2 billion, about what Obama wasted on his green jobs as well. So that's the kind of waste that we keep seeing. And here's the bottom line, folks. They say it is rank protectionism to have these kind of licensing jobs. They say it's a device to fence in those who already have permission to work and to fence out those who do not. See, most of these states who have right-to-work laws will say, you got a right to work, and by that they mean a union. It's like, fine, okay. But then you have to apply for a privilege if you want to create a company. You have to get a privilege license. That always seemed upside down to me. I should have the right to start a company, and that should not be a privilege. But they say, yeah, you have a privilege license in order to get a job, to create a company, but no, you have a right to work. Well, I should have a right to create a company as well. But they shut that down, and that's what Trump is talking about. Broad-based programs that are going to cut regulations that are going to create a level playing field for us. Why should we allow these other companies to compete on slave wages? What is the humanitarian basis for that, these people who talk about being global citizens? I just don't understand it.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You going to sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you going to be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.
But let's talk about why this is the most wonderful time in 8 years. You know, we've seen this factory saved, and we've seen Donald Trump continue today to talk about his policies. We have a story that's up on InfoWars from Bloomberg. Ford says they're willing to work with Trump if the policies are right, says the CEO. And you have to understand, this is why I'm hopeful about this. Okay, first of all, we talked about the details of the Indiana jobs. $7 million from Indiana state money. It wasn't money that Trump gave them. He's not president yet. He couldn't give them the money if he wanted to engage in crony capitalism. And yet you have all these people on both the left and the right who are screaming crony capitalism, crony capitalism. Let's break it down. $7 million for 1,000 jobs over 10 years. That's $700 a year per job. They're going to get more than that in the state of Indiana back from just the taxes that these people pay, let alone the amount of money that will remain in the economy to boost it up everywhere else. So you can discuss this at the state level, decide whether you think that's a good thing. That's very different from what we usually see with these big companies brought in to set up jobs, getting $100,000 per job they say they're going to create. We've seen that here in Texas. We saw it with Elon Musk. That is true crony capitalism, and you cannot support that by any way, means, or form. And yet people do just love Elon Musk. This guy can do no wrong. He's like Steve Jobs. And even though he gets $4 billion, people of crony capitalist funds to create his factories, nobody complained about that, did they? Very few people did.